Good. So good morning, everyone. I think it's time to start. Welcome to the first session of the 67th edition of the IT Press Tour for the first time in Sofia. Beautiful city, a little bit cold. Sorry for that. When we decided to come here, the forecast was completely different. And normally the weather is better, and I'm sure you see the same feeling in your home country with a wave of cold. Yeah, recently it was pretty strange. Welcome again. So it's up to you now.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining. First of all, I'd like to thank Philippe and Celine and the team for organizing this event, especially here in Sofia. Never been here, but it's been a warm welcome, and I'm excited today to talk to you a little bit more about Caeves. I've been in the IT industry for about 30 years, of which I started managing Novell servers, netware, pulling cables, crunching coaxial cables, all the usual kind of stuff you have to do when you get started. And for the last 20 years, I've been involved mostly with enterprise storage, also been involved with helping organizations to solve problems around distributed storage environments and helping them to consolidate. And about 15 years ago, people started talking about the cloud. They started to talk about how do I manage storage more efficiently. And we started to found companies around solving these issues, specifically around distributed storage. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I'm a technologist. My background is mostly technology. But right now at Caeves, as a co-founder, I'm responsible for Caeves product strategy. And I'm working with a team of cloud solutions architects to help support field adoption, to help organizations adopt the technology. So we may be a new name, but as you may see throughout the presentation, we have a lot of history in this space. We built Caeves to solve problems around data storage, around data management, and subsequently predominantly the cost aspect of it and the AI readiness aspect of it. I really want to keep it simple. You know, you guys have a long day, and I really want to focus on the aspect that Caeves is going to provide cheap, deep, easy storage. We're not going to talk about quantum computing or very tough AI stuff that everyone is meandering about in the industry. I want to really keep it practical, and I would like to encourage everyone to just kind of, raise your hand or talk up whenever you have a question. Let's make it interactive. About Caeves, over the past year, we've been working closely with Microsoft to develop Caeves as a platform. As you can see, built for Microsoft Azure. And because of our history with Microsoft technology, file systems, data management systems, as well as Microsoft Azure, it was a very logical next step for us to go to market in that route with Microsoft. In a nutshell, Caeves delivers cost-optimized storage that is easy and AI ready. We believe that organizations, they shouldn't be forced to be putting all of their data into AI. They should be forced to kind of create a data foundation first. So our platform has been designed to supercharge archives, data with AI, and then subsequently turning your company's history into searchable and achievable intelligence. Well, we have a little bit of an agenda here today. I'll talk briefly about the company background, industry trends, our mission and vision, some of the challenges and pain points. Philippe, did you send out the PDF?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Because I want them to listen to you.
Okay. Good. No, I'm the head of product. Yeah. So I'm going to bring up a slide shortly about our leadership team, who's the CEO, who's on our advisory board. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that, talk about the challenges that we're seeing in the industry, especially today with the exponential growth of data, and also predominantly the small fraction of data that's actively used in organizations, and talk about how Caeves addresses these challenges by bringing data into more intelligent object storage and providing similar ways of modern file access as well as legacy access patterns. We have a customer example. I wasn't able to mention the customer itself by name, that's under NDA, but we have an example where we're talking about how this company, NovaStruct Engineering, had been able to adopt Caeves in order to help them solve challenges around silos of data.
What branch is it?
That's an engineering firm out of the Nordics. That's as much as I can say for now. And then subsequently, we'll briefly talk about the competition. I think we are trying to rethink and reinvent the way that we deal with storage. I would personally expect it's 2026 right now. I thought we would all be flying around in jetpacks and things of that nature, but we're still talking about storage, blocks, files, data, intelligence. And also I would by now think that storage would be free as a commodity. But to be honest, and what we're seeing with customers, it's actually not. And I think we can rethink that strategy. I'll show a little bit about the competitive overview, the landscape, our roadmap, and our go-to-market and pricing strategy. We can jump around, and I will talk a little bit more about the future of Caeves, where we envision as a business. We founded 2 years ago, and basically been in stealth mode. And now that we've launched recently, we get really great adoption from Microsoft, from our customers, as well as the Microsoft ecosystem around it.
Excuse me, where have you been founded? Which place?
In New York City.
Yeah. And you're
Or actually Morristown.
So you're an American company?
Yeah, we're an American company with offices, and let me just dive right into it so I can answer all those questions for you. So we are the team that founded a company called Talon Storage Solutions. And Talon Storage Solution is basically was an edge caching technology that has been really successful. We built it from the ground up to acquisition in March 2020 by NetApp. And Talon was built around the premise of centralization and consolidation of unstructured data. So in that scenario, our competitors would have been the likes of a Benzura, an Asuni, distributed file services. We have a lot of knowledge around file systems, around user application workflows, behaviors, as well as how data should be treated in that ecosystem. In 2020, we got acquired by NetApp, and I was part of the product team there under the Cloud Data Services team under Anthony Lai. And the group that originally founded NetApp, or Talon, was supporting aligning cloud storage, driving revenue for the EMEAs, building products, as well as expanding the portfolio. That came to an end in 2025 or 2024, and we founded Caeves Technology. So basically at the end of 2024, we got our group of friends together, and I will show the slide who those persons are, and established a leadership team to address a singular issue that we've seen in all these customers' environments that we were dealing with, not only in the Talon days, but also in the NetApp days. So really kind of regrouping and developing a solution that would become Caeves, and at the same time being able to future-proof that innovation by extending capabilities to, for example, AI.
Would you say that your foundation was a kind of outsourcing of a development effort by NetApp, or is it really so in the end do you speculate on being bought by NetApp or someone else, or do you really want to develop that company into something big and own?
That's a great question. And I always loved being part of startups. It kind of hurt when we sold Talon. It was great as an exit, and it's great to have an event as such. But the most important thing, what I like, is building a company that you can grow and make sustainable efforts in. And if that means for Talon, it was very clear that the world changed 2020. Talon was a branch office solution. Branch offices were shutting down, closing down, so for us that exit made good sense. We were perfectly fine in that sense, but for Caeves, we want to build a company, we want to have fun building it.
The other thing is, you're an American company, which is not really an advantage right now. And Germany and other countries in Europe want to become independent of American companies because American companies undergo American law. American law means your data is not secure, no matter what Microsoft says or pretends or whatever. And so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. I would say that I'm the voice of reason within our company as a Dutch citizen, and also acknowledging the challenges that we're facing, geopolitically speaking, as well as in terms of how organizations are approaching it, in terms of sovereignty, terms of compliance, in terms of adhering to principles that we didn't think we needed to adhere to. So, Ariana, I hear your concern and I see this as well. So, when we made the decision to partner with Microsoft and develop our platform on Microsoft Azure, the sense of urgency was less, but we did see it. And therefore, when building the technology, we took into consideration that actually the software and its extension capabilities should be portable. It should be able to run in an on-premises data center. It should be able to fit within traditional object storage environments. It should be able to connect within secure, even dark side type of operations. So I think you will see in the future slides that we do envision a broader strategy beyond Microsoft Azure. But for now, and I don't want to diminish that, I think Microsoft's been great to us when we're developing the product, and they've been really helpful in order to give us access to the market as well as access to their ecosystem of sellers. For now, I believe we have a great market to address, but I do echo your thoughts that you have to take that into consideration. Data residency is only one thing, data sovereignty is another thing, but then also US Cloud Act spans across many borders. So we definitely, when I'm speaking to my American colleagues, it's definitely something I bring up a lot to create awareness. And what I find in the industry in general, it's like it's swept under the rug often. Like, we'll figure that out, there's going to be midterms and in 2 years everything is going to be different. But I think as a European, a proud European, I think we had a great ecosystem of service providers, and in 20 years ago. T-Systems in Germany, others around the globe. But I think we got a little too comfortable as an industry by handing over our gold, our crystals to the major hyperscalers. That's my personal opinion. I still obviously represent Caeves, but my personal opinion is that we should have been taking more care of what we already had in terms of competitive advantage and in terms of ecosystem to be able to build out managed local service providers with local sovereignty, local governance, and local management. I do believe, though, that for where we are in the evolution of our product and how we're building our product, Microsoft has done a good job reaching out to their customers on the sovereign cloud motion. Also, a lot of Microsoft partners that we work with, they're eager to find more ways to kind of address that subject around data sovereignty with sovereign cloud. We have a partner in the Netherlands, for example, in Spark, that is very much involved with basically holding the keys to the castle in their Azure data center. So a couple of months ago, Satya Nadella came over for I think it was the AI tour, and one of the things was to put out the fires a little bit, and subsequently being able to kind of set up an ecosystem that would be able to support sovereign cloud. But yeah, I hear you. It's definitely a concern for organizations or a topic to address. I think we address it well. Obviously, like I said, we have global offices, US, Netherlands, India. We're privately held, privately funded. We've come out of stealth mode late last year, launched in November in the Microsoft Marketplace. And we currently, as a Microsoft status, we're part of the ISV Success Program. And we're currently working towards our Azure eligibility in the marketplace, which basically gives you an additional tier of acknowledgement and support within that ecosystem. The leadership team background goes back to the early 2000s, from Tacit Networks in the wide area file services days, to Talon, to NetApp, and obviously Caeves. And this is basically the founding team. The founding team, Shirish Patak. You may know him, he knows all things file systems and file storage. Obviously, Shirish and I have worked together for about 20 years now, in different incarnations and different types of roles. And Shirish is the brains behind what we do at Caeves. My role is, like I said, I'm responsible for product strategy. Andrew Mullen is who I'm also very proud to call a friend. And mentor, he is responsible for sales and alliances, and he's been around the industry for a long time. And then Charles Chuck. I think you may know him. He is on our advisory board. I'm really glad to have him on board. He's a critical thinker. He knows a lot about transforming businesses, enabling startups to grow, to scale, and to basically be successful. So this is our leadership team. Like I said, we have engineering in India, we have a team in the Netherlands, and we have a team in multiple offices in the US. And we've launched our product in November last year. Any questions on that before I continue?
Shirish was at Tacit as well?
Yeah. Shirish was basically the inventor of the storage caching over IP protocol. So basically, our background is in edge caching, file caching, data tiering, stubbing. Back in the days, you could combine that or basically correlate that to HSM behavior in the stack. But really, he's a file system kernel driver. Funny story, I was just in New York City a couple of weeks ago, and I met with him, and he had a discussion with someone at the bar. And that person was like, hey, do you do vibe coding? Because everyone's doing vibe coding nowadays. No, I'm in kernel driver development. And the person that was like completely glazed over, he didn't know what he was talking about. But Shirish is a great kernel developer and a great leader. He sees a vision, and I'm here to help execute on that.
How many collaborators do you have globally?
We have about 25 to 30.
What?
Right now?
Right.
Yeah, employees. I think even, yeah. So that's where we are right now. We're looking to scale. I think our scale works really well in the Microsoft ecosystem. We've been able to tap into the alliance early stage, which basically gives us access to the account technology strategists, to the actual the CSAs, the community within Microsoft, so the cloud solutions architects. They really can take this in their back pocket and bring it to their customers. But they,
Finish your
yeah. So basically, they bring it to the customer. So we have an expanded team within Microsoft that helps us go to market.
Do you have any activities in Germany so far? And if not, when do you have some? Or do you have a reseller or something in Germany?
Not at this moment. We have a big network of partners that we work with. I just got to think about some names here, but I can share that with you later.
Yeah.
But we're just establishing that. I think right now our direct go-to-market works really well through the Azure Marketplace. Our partner, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Our partner ecosystem is in development. Because we also know that channel allows to grow and to scale, but it can also be slowing you down a little bit when going to market. So we got to do that for the right reason. I do believe that Germany is a great market. We worked in the past, I worked with large firms in Germany. I was responsible, at NetApp, I was responsible for the Porsche Motorsports storage infrastructure on the racetrack, to the factory, to the simulator and back. So we used our technology stack to help accomplish that. I'm sure that we'll engage with customers like Porsche Motorsports, like Strava.
Porsche doesn't have any more money.
No, that's right. But it just goes to show we have a good understanding of the market in Germany.
Yeah, you just told you like being in the business of startups.
Yeah.
Does this mean that when this company is mature, you will go to the next project?
That's a good question. Well, yeah, obviously, I'll try to retain the culture. The thing is, what I like doing most is be hands-on, build stuff myself. I used to be an old, I don't even want to call it developer, but I used to play around in Fox Pro for DOS back in the days. And obviously I did some programming and some development. So if I come up with artifacts to my engineering team, I love to be hands-on and say, hey, this is what I need, this is the workflow, this is the pipeline. But yeah, I don't know, Hans, I think in Talon we had 8 years, and out of which 7 years we were really startup. And the last year it was kind of hockey stick growth, and then we sold to NetApp. I don't know what's going to happen, but the most important thing is I get up in the morning and I know that I'm going to contribute and build something. At the end of the day, I have something accomplished. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't really get that from corporate. It was really hard to kind of find momentum and execute quick in the corporate world, and that's why I love startups. So I don't know, who knows?
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll jump in. I'm going to share some metrics. I'm sure you've all seen them, or most likely you're going to see them another 5-6 times today. But I'm going to skip quickly through them. let's go through this, and then I want to talk a little bit more about our mission and vision before diving into the technology and the demo. So I'll be quick here. I think we all know that data is growing exponentially. I didn't even know how many zeros, the total amount of zettabytes were, but I think it's 21. I know we see global data creation will grow to 291 zettabytes by the end of 2027. This number was 175 up to 2030, only 2-3 years ago. So the prediction itself was only a fraction of what it's going to be. I'm sure we're going to, this is going to, grow hyper exponentially. And what we also know, 80 to 90% of the data is actually unstructured. 85% of unstructured data is only created once, sits dark, is untouched by AI or analytics. And I think everyone knows that. And if I say that, yeah, we get that. But what we also see is that a lot of storage budgets, they go lost when dealing with silos of data and basically maintaining cold or redundant data in IT environments. We know that the problem is not really that we don't have enough data, but we're really not using it the way that we should be using it. And I think that's our opportunity, and that's why AI is forcing a paradigm shift in terms of kind of bringing data to life, and that's our main goal. So I'm going to be really quick here. I think the future has changed. This has been confirmed by IDC, Gartner, McKinsey. The era of passive storage is over. Data can no longer sit idle. Unstructured data basically is intelligence to be tapped into. We also know that economics are shifting from cost to capability. We're not really talking about gigabytes or terabytes per month. We're really talking about the capability and the value that it unlocks. And in AI, they're even talking about, for example, being able to search in a deep archive, being able to contextualize on it using Microsoft's 365 search and Copilot. That's what I'm going to demonstrate shortly as well. And our vision is basically the future of enterprise storage is not cheaper disk. I think it's a smarter data foundation. Like I was just saying, I think data is built upon storage. I always take the journey of like storage becomes data, data becomes information, becomes intellectual property, and your richness. And I think we believe that the content that your data represents gives you a competitive advantage if it's readily accessible at a cost and a price point that is accessible as well as acceptable at that point. So it's really about defining and changing the mindset, and we envision that customers and organizations, they are sitting on a gold mine. They, sitting on data and knowledge that should be available to every workflow in the enterprise. Cost optimized, deep, easy, and AI ready. That's what Caeves is. And someone call it cheap, deep, and easy. And why easy? I think one of the things is I've gone through a lot of storage transformation projects, and they start really easy, and they also show very easy from a marketing and product positioning perspective. But then when it comes to data migration, when it comes to classification, when it comes to compatibility with applications and user workflows, it's not always as easy. So the goal, the mindset that we had is really focusing on making Caeves an easy to adopt platform that allows you to get started quickly and find a pragmatic and practical way to start enabling and embracing AI. And you guys, I think you would all know this person. It was funny because I was watching, it was March 16th, about 2 weeks ago, exactly. And I was watching GTC conference, and they start with all these great movies and the things and everything that comes around, and you're like very impressed, but at the same time you're very intimidated about all the new stuff. I'm like, oh gosh, how do I keep up with this stuff? So I watched this video, and I don't know if we have the audio. And I'm just gonna, I don't think we have the audio, but basically I'm just gonna summarize what he said. And it was music to my ears because it reinforces what we're seeing still here also in the audience, is it's still very relevant. So until now, Jensen said, this data, unstructured data, has been completely useless to the world. Unfortunately, we cannot query it, we cannot search for it, there's no easy indexing of unstructured data, and you'll have to understand its meaning and its purpose. So this for me was a great hook, not only a validation point, but also a great hook to really help contextualize all the fancy stuff that's on this slide and all the cool stuff that they're presenting with robots and running around. The real issue is still there. I think the real foundational problem around getting your data in a state that allows for legacy access patterns, today's problems, today's world, as well as bringing it into the future is still something that needs to be addressed. And that's been one of the premises of Caeves. We talked about the challenges, the pain points. I'm going to briefly go through this, the economics problem. On one end, when we talk to customers, we're focusing on storage and cost optimization. And on the other end, we make sure that we can help modernize the workloads in order to get the data into an AI-ready state. And I think we briefly touched upon the problems it pertains, so I'm going to move quickly through this. And I think we all know this image, and Philip, when we met in September, you referred to the iceberg. Now we've seen this, I kind of mocked it up a little bit in an overview, but this sums it all up. I think all organizations are challenged with maintaining the growth, the exponential growth of storage, and paying primary fees and the enterprise tax that comes with data. Whether that's historical data, whether that's live data, whether that's high performance compute data, we believe that there should be a better way of approaching this.
But Jaap, you're stating that 70% of the data is never used anymore after it's full data. But on the other hand, it's stored because the law demands it.
Yep.
So it still has value,
Yep,
but,
still has
but you
value.
cannot use it in your business processes.
Correct. And that's why we believe it should sit on the lowest, deepest, cheapest cost storage tier, but it should be instantaneously accessible.
Yeah.
So if you look at the day in the life of an IT admin or of a knowledge worker, we typically find, and this is what we're hearing, like, I need access to that project that we did 7 years ago. And it takes a week for IT to rehydrate that project from tape or virtual tape library or external backups and basically put it into the file system and here say, yeah, your data is right there. It's a week later, it's right there for you to use. We believe that that should not be taking days. We believe that should be taking minutes. And that's why we built Caeves, and we're going to get into the essentials of the proposition there. But to your point, yeah, that's right. It has to be there. There's data retention policies, there's legal hold requirements, there's all kinds of requirements in the industry that have impact to the way that you're managing, storing your data. So why not implementing the flexibility into a platform that allows you to combine hot, cool, cold, and even archive tiers and present that as a file system, and then still having the high performance capability of retrieval and access. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but I think the data democratization dilemma I wrote a piece about this. I think a lot of organizations are trying to connect their existing data to AI or services. And some customers, they come to me and say, hey, why don't we just train an LLM based on all the information that we have? Why don't we feed all of our data into an entire model and that's going to be it? Well, first of all, that's going to require you to set up triple the infrastructure and storage requirements that you have in order to inference, in order to train it, in order to make sure that it's actually deemed feasible as a model. Second of all, you may not want to expose everything to an LLM or to your own data model. We believe that historical data still requires governance, still requires security, still requires ACLs, and that should translate in a model. So if you train a model like an LLM, it basically becomes a free-for-all. All of the data is available to everyone at all of the time. So if I'm prompting, hey, what was my CEO's bonus last year? I'll be glad to get an answer from my model. I don't want that. I want to be able to secure the data in its original form factor so that it basically cascades throughout the pipeline, meaning that if I'm doing a search or if I run a Copilot prompt, it still factors in the permission structures as they once were, and also factors in a level of security and governance. So this is basically what I'm seeing. A lot of organizations are looking to structurally reset and figuring out ways to kind of make their data more tangible for extended capabilities. So just a synopsis of the pain points, what we're seeing: a rising storage costs, data sprawl, it's still out there. The customer I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, 48 storage gateways, 3 different storage platforms for work in progress, live projects, archive projects. Organizations that have moved to the cloud, they may have embraced intelligent technology, built on proprietary file systems, still very costly. We see on average 8 to 10 cents per gigabyte per month. Total cost of ownership is a real kind of, a normal quote unquote price that customers are paying nowadays for data that's barely touched or barely used. Limited growth capabilities for on-premise storage arrays. So if you really want to extend the capability to external services, you have to duplicate your infrastructure. If you want to set up RAG, if you want to do chunkings, embeddings, and all the good stuff that RAG provides, it's really hard to kind of do that with the existing infrastructure that's in place, not even factoring in the exponential data growth that we're seeing in the industry as a whole. Lack of on-demand capacity, like I'm bootstrapping a new project, let's say I'm an engineering firm, I got all these CAD 3D models and everything. How do I basically start a new project? I need X amount of terabytes to get started. I need 3D images, I need fly-throughs, I need drone images, I need survey data, geospatial information. It's very hard to take a traditional storage approach and get immediate on-demand capacity. Historical access to business information, we spoke about that. If data gets archives, they typically end up in a graveyard. We believe that when data sits in cheap and deep, it's very hard to get visibility and it's very hard to get retrieval going for audits, litigation, or analytics. Complex and expensive RAG, I touched upon that, and search stops at the storage boundaries. So basically, when you're searching, typically you're searching, especially when it's kind of an offline system or a tiered system, you're searching only in the metadata, and you have very little context awareness around the content that data represents. Dark data is inaccessible to AI services. We spoke about that. Jensen spoke about that as well. And disparate data sources also often equals vendor lock-in. So I've worked with a lot of customers that had a combination of NetApp, and then they had Commvault, and they had Rubrik for their backups, and they had, peer software for some sort of DFSR type of sync. Disparate data sources often locks you into a specific platform or a specific vendor, which is something that a lot of organizations want to avoid. Now, Ariana, to your point, that also backs on the governance and the sovereign aspect of data. You want to be able to kind of get your data into a place where you can access it even without the vendor that provides it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we built for. Caeves delivers cost-optimized, deep and searchable storage for enterprise file data. So that's what we're focusing on today. I'm just going to move quickly to the value prop. Any questions?
Yeah. So to be sure to understand, at the beginning I have all my data on premise, and with your solution, all my data will be migrated to Azure, right?
That's the idea. Yep.
And you say it's a cost reduction at the end because on Azure it will cost less than on my.
That's an interesting claim. But if you manage it properly with data lifecycle management policies, so let's say if you take something from primary tier 1 or tier 2 storage and move it to Azure, if you move everything to Azure Files, you're going to pay more.
Yes.
If you're going to move everything to Azure Blob Hot, you most likely end up paying more. Mm-hmm. But if you move everything to archive tier and a little bit to cold and then a little bit to cool and a small chunk to hot, it's going to end up being more cost effective. That's what we've seen with our customers.
But what if you want to get the data out one day?
That's right. And that's basically, and I'm going to talk about that. Let me bring that topic. Let me put that on and make that a mental note. When we go through the diagrams and the architecture, how it's presented in Microsoft's environment. Because that's a concern for a lot of organizations. Do I need to rehydrate, or can I just use the object store and present it to other services and use it as an instance? So, Ariana, are you okay for me to answer that when we get through that?
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, I think we spoke about that. I'm just going to be cautious of time here. Caeves is built for cost efficiency. So, to your point, Jan, we're really driving TCO through intelligent tiering and caching at the front end, and leveraging Azure Object Storage, supercharging its capabilities with data lifecycle management policies, storage actions, being able to provide the right storage access tier, but also creating portable metadata that comes with the object. So you're really moving from file system semantics at the front end to an Azure Object Store that has those capabilities and has that awareness and the knowledge, so that later onwards you can index it to AI services. So really about, I'm just going to be quick here, deploying our technology within customers' Microsoft Azure tenants. So basically, if a customer chooses to adopt our technology, everything fits within their own subscription, within their own tenant. Easy to deploy, use and manage, and also easy to adopt. Like I said, we don't have to train entire models. We just start quick, we create a file system, we mount it to object store, and we connect it to AI. I would always say like it's file to object to AI. That's how you would see it. And then subsequently when the indexing happens into a vector database. And the vector database is provided by Microsoft Graph, which is the foundation for all things Microsoft 365. And that part is basically what's gonna give you that instantaneous search and access capabilities. And then your object can slowly move from one tier to the other. And that gives you the value, and that gets you to the price points that I'm talking about, like 1 or 2 cents per gigabyte per month total cost of ownership, including Caeves license.
So Microsoft Graph is a vector database?
It is, they call it a graph/vector database.
Yes, but graph and vector is different.
Yeah, different things, yeah, I know, but it's
So
the
what is it?
it's the Microsoft Graph
Yeah, but
service.
still, you have to categorize if it's a graph database or a vector database, because these things are different things. So what is it? I don't care what the name is, I want to know what it is. So if it's a graph database, it's not a vector database.
It's a graph database.
So why does it say, so why do you say it goes into a vector database if it goes into a graph database?
Well, Ariana, there's multiple ways to approach that, right?
Okay.
Indexing, you can, by default, we leverage Microsoft Copilot. So Copilot is built on the fundamentals of the graph service, say. But if you look at Microsoft, the language that they use on their website, they talk about graph, they talk about RAG, they talk about vector, all in the same sentence. What I'm trying to say is, we, by default, out of the box, connect to Graph, which is a graph database, which has vector database characteristic. There's overlaps in certain areas, but it's not a vector database in its traditional form. What we can do, and this is what I want everyone to understand here, is Microsoft Copilot for us is a start. And the Microsoft ecosystem is a start when it comes to getting data more enriched. Vector databases, RAG infrastructure, model context protocol, those technologies can be very logical extension towards that. So yes, you're right in terms of the terminology within Microsoft Graph, but in its capabilities of bringing it to external services like Copilot Studio as a knowledge source, or even building our own model context protocol, that allows the same source of data, the object store, with accompanying metadata, to be used in different access patterns. So basically, I put it on one
But
file.
it has to be adjusted then,
Yeah.
customer specific adjusted. Then
Well, by
if somebody
default-
wants to use it with
Yeah.
MCP,
Yeah, you have to adjust it. Yeah.
that's your work.
And that's my work when it comes to our roadmap.
So it's a lot of consulting costs.
No.
No.
No. Let me try to bring back what I was saying earlier. Solution as we offer it is built for the Microsoft enterprise as getting started, right? File to object to Copilot. Let me say it like that today. Copilot is a first start. It's great to make, as an organization, to take baby steps to get into that ecosystem, to connect your private data to AI, secure and govern it via Graph. But we don't believe it's everything. And I would be very arrogant to think if it would be the case, right? So I believe that having the object store with the accompanied metadata of the origin file system gives you the opportunity to connect it easily. Now, the easiest way, the path of least resistance, or what I would call from a product perspective, the happy path, is Microsoft Copilot. Create a custom data connector, and that's how you expose your data. Beyond that, you can implement integrations with Copilot Studio or Microsoft AI Foundry, more extensive systems that I don't have all the knowledge on. agentic workflows. There's a lot of stuff going on in the industry that we're still kind of scratching the surface in terms of how can we play a part in that. But what I do know is that by providing a foundation in object storage and providing a foundation that has that metadata awareness from the source origin, gives you the capability to shape the data for AI readiness. And whether that's in graph, whether that's in vector, whether that's in RAG, or whether that's in model context protocol, to be honest, I don't really care. What I do care about is that organizations can bring their data into a platform that's cost efficient and basically allows them to get real-time access at the front end, and then at the same time give them access through intelligent services. And of course, that's going to require them some level of consulting or services, but we have built our solution to be turnkey in the marketplace. If your data is garbage, it's still going to be garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's something to factor in when it comes to embarking. You could say, hey, well, yeah, I just like the cost efficiencies. Just give me the data foundation. I don't care about AI. Perfectly fine. Start with that. Shape your foundation, get it right, get it into object, and then when you're ready, bring it to intelligent services. I'm just going to speed up a little bit here because I think we only have 35, 40, 30 minutes.
You finish at 11?
Okay. I'm going to quickly move through this.
So what is the source? The source is, of course, a Windows server.
Yep. I'm going to skip a few things. You'll find some of the product positioning use cases in the deck. But the source is a Windows server. And basically, this is where it begins. At the left end of the slide, you'll see a Caeves instance. When a customer onboards Caeves, they deploy Caeves software-defined storage through the Microsoft Marketplace. And there's multiple ways to deploy. You can deploy in the cloud, so where your VM sits next to your object storage, or you can deploy on premises, where you would deploy our software on a Windows Server instance or a VM template and connect that to a remote object store. Or you could even look at edge to cloud scenarios where each branch office, our old Talon days, each branch office becomes its own file system with object storage in the backend. But basically what we built is we built a Windows Server software-based solution that has a file system kernel driver that subsequently uses an upcall mechanism to communicate with what's called the Azure Data Movement Library.
Okay, so this is the source. For the target, any object with an S3 interface? Or?
Currently, we're focused on Azure Blob,
okay.
But we are developing, as we speak, S3, Google Cloud, AWS S3, SDK basically attaches to all things S3 on premises.
And if someone wants a full on-prem solution?
Yeah, that's something we're currently designing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, most of the on-prem integrations, like I think back in the days, and don't pin me down on it, I think back in the days the gold standard was Swift S3. But I think the S3 SDK that's used by Amazon is mostly the default to connect to let's say a cloud or other software. Yeah.
And on-prem, so I have to access my files who are stored in reality in Azure as an object.
Mm-hmm.
So do I have to connect to a virtual machine on Azure, or do I have a kind of gateway, a NAS gateway on-prem that connects to...
Yeah, you have a sort of a NAS gateway, and you could co-locate that NAS gateway in Azure as if you just want to keep it in the public cloud, but you could also co-locate it locally. So even if there's distance to your object store, then obviously you don't want to kind of incur the SMB latency that you would normally have between your client and a remote virtual machine or a NAS. You really want to localize that. In that case, you could bring the Caeves instance with its capabilities back to on-premises and have the object store sitting in Azure.
And you offer the two options. It's possible to...
So if I would I'm just going to jump around here. If I look at the deployment options, customers that want to move everything to public cloud, including compute and storage, they can basically put the Caeves instance next to object, next to Copilot. If you want to leverage hybrid, this is what you could do. You could put a Caeves instance in your, let's say, your local data center or your remote office, and that basically becomes your file system entry point. And then the object store sits in Azure. And then there's a third, which is something which is less traditional, but I kind of Love the idea because this could also displace, cloud controller gateways, hardware solutions, expensive solutions like Nasuni or Panzura. For edge to cloud use cases where you would basically create a small branch office box, like the old days, with tiering, subbing capability to Azure Object Storage. And then if you have multiple instances, you can overarch that with multiple data connectors that will bring that together in one ecosystem, which means that if you're doing a search, you can choose to search across all connectors, across all instances and all data sets. So that's in a nutshell the different deployment methodologies.
But you mentioned also on-prem that object storage that was here.
That was not there. No, that's in development.
And how can you optimize the cost with on-prem object storage?
That-
Because in this case you have only one tier, basically.
Yeah, that's what you have.
Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously the way to do that is potentially extend the capability of the software beyond caching, tiering at the front end, protocol access and object store to create an orchestration layer that gives you the capability of moving between different platforms. But that becomes, like I've seen a lot of these projects happen where, for example, solutions like Comprise are used to move data off from one platform to the other. And it's very cumbersome to manage and cumbersome to understand. There may be benefits to that, but that's not our focal point where we are today. So our focus is right now with Microsoft Azure, but we do acknowledge that we built the software on the foundations of being able to run it on premises as well. And then basically, if we look at the front end, we got the multi-tier data architecture, as I would call it. It's a Windows VM with a metadata volume, a snapshot, and a caching volume that actually integrates a combination of caching and tiering in an asynchronous way to Azure Object Store. And asynchronous allows you to rapidly migrate data in locally and then subsequently stub and tier it out to Azure. And you'll find that when you're running performance benchmarks, if you run FIO tests on NFS, you get bandwidth and significant, I think, to get up to 500 terabytes of data migrated in a week.
So when you run those benchmark, where exactly in the cloud?
Basically on-prem or in the cloud. So we've run benchmarks, and I can share some more detail with you later if you'd like that. That basically would be in cloud, with the client workstation sitting next to the instance that's used for the source migration. So we've done a migration with this customer in the Nordics that were sitting on Azure files. They were paying 7 cents per gigabyte per month for Azure files. I think they paid about $170,000 a month of Mac credentials, Azure credentials for that storage. And we migrated that from Azure files into Caeves. So Caeves was sitting next to Azure files. So we did an SMB migration and we were able to get 500 terabytes a week migrated. Now, mileage may vary, latency factor. So I always say, like my cloud solutions architects teams come to me and say, 250 terabytes a week is a safe number for us to assume when it comes to a side-by-side migration.
So to start, it's a very good alternative to Azure files.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
a good start.
Yep.
Okay. And when I have when I had all my files on-prem and then now I'm moving them in the cloud, I suspect the hot data is slower, no?
It depends. Yeah, it depends on the tiering. So basically, what we do here is we ingest the data. It lands in object store. By default, it lands in hot or in cool, whatever you configure. If you configure to land in hot, you have an aging parameter, let's say 30 days. And after 30 days, it moves from hot to cool. And then it moves after like 6 months from cool to cold.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, all of the indexing and the performance benchmarks that I've done on hot, cool, and cold are pretty much equivalent in terms of performance for unstructured data. I don't know if that's the case for structured or for, let's say, the waffle file system that does striping and that basically uses object for block storage, so to say. That's a different construct. But from what I'm seeing in terms of moving unstructured data to object, especially hot, cool, cold, basically the same performance tier, but the cost is different. Hot's 18 cents or $18 per terabyte per month, and then basically cool is about 3.6. So it's like 6 times more cost effective, and that's where we're getting the cost efficiencies from. By being able to present a file system with tens of or hundreds of millions of objects accessible and readable in real time, but then have the object store, tiering it off transparently. Now we do this with DLM policies. Microsoft's introducing something called smart tiering, you may have heard about. Also does something on rehydrate as well. So you can basically create policies that allows you to kind of let your data sync all the way to archive and then dynamically bring it up and based on access patterns, last access date and things of that nature. So we're aligning with Microsoft on that strategy, but that's where we're getting our cost efficiencies from. So the object store is really used for long-term data storage, as well as has portable metadata associated with, which subsequently indexes through a container instance that we built. And that container instance is responsible for all of the indexing into Graph or Copilot. That's it in that sense. And the most important thing about this is, and this is about me going back to the principles of security, the principles of authentication and authorization. All of the permissions that you set at the front end, restrictive, your traditional ACLs on NTFS permissions, explicit denies, everything, cascades through object storage, through the connector, into Graph. Which basically means that if I'm searching for something I don't have permissions to, I'm not getting any results. If I'm iterating on a context of prompt, I'm not getting any results there either. It basically adheres to the principles. It does require federation between your traditional Active Directory and Entra ID, but that's more of a reference architecture discussion than it actually is a challenge, let's say. So, long story short, this is basically what I would say. This is the data pipeline that we built all the way from file to object to AI. We built an integrated VSS snapshot functionality that's important to factor in. We want to make sure that we can provide a form of immutability. And we live the way that we designed the file system under the hood from snapshot to snapshot. So most of our customers adopt our technology for tier 2, tier 3 data. So basically little churn. And therefore, we're working towards tier 1 and high performance primary storage. We have to do some testing around that. But the focus is to get like a lot of archive data into the platform and basically seal it with a snapshot. But in case if there is churn, we do have snapshot capabilities based on the update sequence during all the file system. So we identify has there been a change and got to run a snapshot, either on a scheduled basis, on a forced basis, or on a monthly basis. And that's how we kind of solidify the file system snapshots with the object stores. And that's how we keep track of that. So in a nutshell, we're taking file semantics, applying that to object stores, keeping the metadata local, including all of the extended attributes and the capabilities that you're going to allow for search, and bringing that into the connector. This connector is a container instance, like I said, which basically feeds off the object store and the metadata tables that correspond to it. And that basically is how it does claims-based indexing. So if you have to index 200 million files, you may want to scale this horizontally. And some customers may even want to put like an AKS in front of that if they want to do so. But most customers, they deploy a single instance. With a single instance, we index about 1 million objects per day, given the appropriate compute and performance profile. And the indexing happens in different ways than just your traditional Copilot indexer. We've built in different Python modules where it leverages a combination of markdown extraction, docklink parsing, as well as OCR. So there's additional modules, and in the future we're building in VLMs as well to get the capabilities beyond what Microsoft offers out of the box, but really give you more context and intelligence out of the file set. So if you have an old PDF with written text and you want to bring that into the ecosystem, it still is able to recognize that, so you can search on it and you subsequently can iterate on that information.
But does it mean actually you build two products, the Caeves instance
Yep.
and the Caeves Copilot?
Connector, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Connector.
So basically, if you say, where's your secret sauce? It's right here at the front end for caching, tiering, stubbing. And it's right here at the Copilot connector and the indexing. So that's where there's secret sauces. Everything we do in the object store is great, but that's Microsoft's, right? That we're augmenting an object store. Customer could say, this is something I'd like you to take away as well. Customers say, hey, great, thanks for helping me to unwrite and read my data in Azure. If we do not provide enough value here at the front end in terms of accessibility or value here at the back end in terms of AI, and the customer can choose to walk away from us and say, hey, thanks for getting my data into Object Store. We're willing to take that risk because we believe we can add way more value here to justify giving the customer the freedom and the flexibility to move away whenever they want. So that's basically how the construct comes together. And in essence, it's just about kind of finding the right footprint for the right data at the right tier. And that comes with the right pricing. And to give you a little bit of an idea what those benefits are, I think I hit home on them quite easily. We created this little infographic thingy around going from disparate storage, data sprawl, legacy NAS systems. And I do know that over the last 20 years, a lot of organizations have already started to solve these problems. But some of these problems still persist on the left-hand side. We believe that by bringing it into Caeves, it drives you not only cost optimization, but it also gets your data AI ready and future-proof, while maintaining legacy access patterns and modern access patterns. I'm working with an energy firm in Norway at the moment. We got 17 petabytes on EMC storage, and they pay up to 9 cents per gigabyte per month total cost of ownership. And then they have like an offsite backup. And obviously that's not a sustainable model. And we've been able to get that down drastically. But we're eager, we're a startup, we're willing to kind of give up a greater private offer for customers at that scale. So we're really focusing on getting the right tier to the right workloads, to the right data for the right purpose. So what I've done is I put together a little bit of a demo to explain a little bit more about the data pipeline. And I have a customer scenario, a customer success story. I haven't officially got the publication approval, so I had to obfuscate the name. What I wanted to show you briefly in the videos is I wanted to show you the capabilities of connecting file services to objects, which in this case is our Intelligent Deep Storage object account, and subsequently connecting that to Microsoft 365 search environments. And the easiest way, and I'm not going to encourage customers to do a full-blown migration using Windows Explorer. Believe it or not, a lot of customers are still using robocopy for multi-threaded operations to move data from one place to the other, but anything that's SMB or NFS related, you can basically use connect to your source and migrate into Caeves. So this video here, I don't know if it's going to play yet. This video shows a local file set that I created for the IT press tour. As you can see, this is accessible through a native UNC path. As normal, this looks and feels like a file system. And what I've done is I basically took some of Philippe's content and I moved this into the actual Caeves virtual file share. This actually triggers the caching, the tiering, the stubbing to Object Store. At the same time, I got a Linux instance, and I can see the files that I just migrated through SMB are visible through NFS as well. I can retrieve the contents, I can create a new file as well. So you're really looking at a multi-protocol component at the front end. I'm just creating a text file here, which I'm going to refer to later onwards, which just kind of has some dummy content. Jaap was at the IT press tour. And I'm going to save this. This basically uses NFS. NFS 3 by default. That's our go-to. I think based on my experiences, and I'm not an NFS expert, but based on my experiences, NFS 4.1 still has some quirks and issues. As you can see, the file's there, and you can access it regularly through the file system. This now is stored in object. So if you would look at the next video, I'm going to show you briefly behind the scenes what happens when it moves into object. This is my customer's environment. So basically, I'm going to go to my storage browser. I'm going to go to my blob container. And in my blob container, I'm keeping snapshots, which are volume-based snapshots, as well as file identifiers. So basically, we're keeping each file in the object store, which corresponding metadata information. As you can see, I created this from a Windows client. My security descriptors are embedded within the object store. All of this is integrated with Entra ID, so this object store is presented as the single source of truth, which is also accessible from the backend from the Copilot indexer. So as you can see, the test.txt is right there. This was the source origin location where I put that data in. In addition to that, you can see we created some lifecycle management policies, and this is all ARM template automation. And that's why it makes it really easy to deploy the Caeves solution. And as you can see, after 30 days, this tiers from, I think it was hot to cool. And there's different tiering parameters. So this is really the behind the scenes look in terms of what that looks like. But then if we look at that data, now that I've moved it into my file system, it ends up into Object Store. Now I'm going to my Microsoft search, and I'm going to go through, look for Caeves IT Press Tour. I'm going to click that vertical, which is basically a adaptive card that you can create. And guess what? You have access, when you're authenticated and authorized with Entra, you have access to the content. You can download it, and you can get the information that I was just sharing as well as you can source back to the source origin. So it's easy to kind of go back. So imagine this file may have been sitting on your file system for 30 years. And then subsequently now you have readily accessible, you can access it from the front end and from the back end. So really from the file system as well as from the...
Can we say it's a modern file tiering solution?
Yeah. It's some call it a file system overlay, modern file tiering. I think that's... Yeah.
And how do you match the permission? Because for NTFS you can match Windows permission with private permission, but with NFS.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do not have the immediate answer, but we're currently validating that with the Kerberos version 5.
Okay, so Linux
that's in the works.
Should be Active Directory joined.
Yeah, that's in the works. So my team's working on writing up the entire reference architecture, the best practices. Who knows? Yeah, I think the majority of my customers that I worked with back in it's mostly SMB. But I think NFS could be super exciting for media workloads, and that's why I want to embrace it. So I kind of forced the team a little bit to kind of move in that direction as well. So we still have some learnings to do. We know from a compatibility perspective, we're just exporting an NFS share from the Windows server from that. So it's just there about making the right profile, making sure that it's joined to AD, making sure you can access it. That's going to be the most important part. So that's still in the works, but I wanted to show you because we can support that capability.
Another question, you mentioned a snapshot of the storage.
Yep.
Why don't we use versioning instead of?
Yeah, we do both.
Okay.
Yeah, we do versioning, and then on the back of that, we do snapshots of an entire volume. So that even if you lose your instance at the front end, you can reconstruct it and you can restore it easily. So we do obviously a version control like VSS, previous versions, that's been built in. And then on top of that, we take a snapshot of the metadata volume, which metadata volume basically is the file system representation of the Linux. The next step, so I showed search, and now I want to, based on the couple of files that I put in the system and I indexed, I wanted to show the Copilot integration. Oops. Yeah. So I'm just going to say, tell me anything you know about the IT Press Tour from your corporate archive. Now this is an agent I created. And this agent basically only iterates and contextualizes on private data through the custom data connector. So it only uses the couple of files to create context around this. Now this is using the Microsoft Graph backend, but it basically traverses back to all of the little Caeves icons here where it basically sources the actual dinner made in Blue Restaurant. That's an important one. And then everyone's updates, so you need the phone numbers in there. You can obfuscate that if you're training your agent to do so. But as you can see, Copilot iterates on the information, spits it out in real time. This data could be sitting in your archives for 30 years and you may not even know it. And as I just showed, all of the information is readily available at your fingertips. And if I click sources, I can go to my origin documents, and I can still download it, get direct access it from the back end. So that's how we connect to your point, modern tier, like the old world with the new world.
Just to understand, so I'm in Copilot. I'm asking questions, he answers, he gives me the list of the sources, and when I click on a source, it opens inside the browser. It doesn't open the file on my desktop.
You can choose to kind of, in the Copilot experience, it opens it from the object store.
Yes.
Now you can choose like to change your prompt to say, give me the UNC path.
Okay.
So I could literally say, I could change this behavior by creating an agent to behave differently. But I just wanted to show you that this information is available when iterating on it, when getting like creating context on top of like what was unstructured data. But the way you present it is up to you. So if you say, hey, I want to create an agent that doesn't give me the sources notation, but just gives me a table of all my UNC paths associated with this data. So let's say you have to do an audit, or you have to do a, one example, for example, was forensic research. So let's say when the Grenfell Tower in London stood on fire, it took the companies and all the authorities about a year to get access to that information, to figure out who was the supplier, what was the supply chain look like, who approved those kind of panels on the side of the building, and where else did we use them to mitigate the risk with that terrible incident that happened. So I'm not saying that could be resolved in a minute, but getting like real-time, real contextual access to your data, even if it's buried deep in the trenches of your data archives, is something that a lot of organizations are looking for. That
Yes.
purpose.
So actually, my question was, let's imagine I'm working on files on my computer, and then I want to use this feature from Copilot just to find an old document. The purpose, the goal I want to have, just to open that old document.
You can do that. Okay. Yeah, you can 100%. Like I showed in the search, you see the UNC path. You could say, I could do this in my demo environment, but you could in the instructions of your agent, you could say, for each source, present me the exact UNC path to the original file, so that you click it goes to your namespace, it opens it from there.
Okay.
So yeah, you can do that. Yeah. We just kind of chose the easy way to show you like what that was. But I think this is the result of shaping a good data foundation. Customers may say, yeah, I don't want Copilot, or I'm not ready for this yet. I just want to bring this to my IT team so that they can do a little bit of their search. That's perfectly fine. You can say the connector is only available to Jaap, or only available to the IT team, or the connector should only have access to this part of the file system. So I have a file system that basically I index everything. But what I could do is say, I only want to index my HR or engineering folder, or I only want to give access to a connector to a specific file set. You could do that. You have the level of granularity that you can implement in order to shape the data and provide lineage around it in terms of what you expose to the systems that you attach to. But the most important thing is we don't lose the comfort of losing a file system. And I think a lot of organizations and applications are still used to having access to a multi-protocol access file system that gives them the capability of managing it, accessing it, securing it, and moving it in the right direction. So this kind of sums it up: file to object to AI. To your point, Philippe, modern data to modern theory. I think that's something that works really, really well. So,
do you see? Sorry, do you see some kind of business acceleration or adoption acceleration with the recent pricing changes on the market? Let's say on NAND, flash, even HDD probably, but invite people to say, oh, I need to consider this kind of solution to articulate a more cost-effective approach?
it's a very interesting statement.
Yeah.
And I think
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I would suspect the major hyperscalers would basically punish customers for that anyway. The left way around or the right way around, as we say in the Netherlands. But I do believe that by creating a virtual capacity and a virtual representation of a file system that could be multi-petabyte scale with only a small snapshot of disk, would help you reduce costs from that storage compute, but also from an availability perspective. I'm running my Linux host on a spot instance, and every time I'm working on it, it blows up. because I can feel, and also with this response from Copilot, I can feel that some of the Microsoft regions and data centers, they're kind of hitting the limits, or they're being QoS'd in a certain way, right? So I think that's definitely an opportunity for organizations that they don't have on-demand access to capacity. They have issues with the supply chain. It takes them weeks to get access to memory or to storage or compute. Yeah, definitely an angle.
To stay on the price topic, so with your solution, I store a certain amount of data.
Yep.
I do a certain amount of snapshot, this kind of things, and I do a certain amount of prompt. So
Yeah.
how do you build all those different things?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And let me just jump into that, and I'll just go back. Remind me to go back to my little customer example. But the pricing schematics are important. We do have a pricing calculator on the website, but what I've created a bit of a propensity example. But before I go there, let me just kind of go through the pricing section here. It's all the way in the back. So, how do we price? We price based on consumed capacity. The first 5 terabytes are free of charge for any customer. And they get all the features, all the bells and whistles, and the Copilot connector and everything. So if you want to try it out, you have an Azure subscription and tenant, and most likely a credit card because you have to consume it. You basically enable.
Just to be sure, so under the account, the blob, Azure blob account, I have to pay it to Azure or to you?
You pay it to Azure. So
Okay.
basically you augment what Microsoft provides. So you may have a Mac agreement with Microsoft. You have a fixed price for object storage. You pay them for these services. We are just providing an incremental charge for the file system front-end capability, the snapshots, the tiering, the stubbing, and the Copilot connector. That's basically what we're doing. We price, like I said, the first 5 terabytes free, and after that it's basically a tiered model. So the more you use, the more cost efficient it's going to be for every gigabyte of managed, quote unquote, Caeves hosted storage in your own customer environment. And what we find is this is an easy way to get started. And if you only have 20 terabytes, your pricing may still be, your total cost of ownership may still be 6 or 7 cents per month. But as soon as you start to increase, and that's why we're focusing on enterprise market, like anything, our average customer starts with 200 terabytes. And then obviously the most recent ones I'm working with are in the tens of petabytes. And then it just also becomes a funny math exercise. So then we typically end up with creating a private offer and normalizing the pricing to say, hey, well, what if we offer you a price point at 1 cent per gigabyte per month across the board for your entire estate, or even less, on top of what you're paying Microsoft. And then basically what we do beyond that, once we model that out.
Why don't you give the price per terabyte? No, because you.
No, we want to tier it. Yeah, we want to drive the incentive. We thought about that indeed, but obviously we decided to kind of tier it in such a way to drive adoption as well as kind of incentivize customers to put more on the platform. And that basically results in like a propensity. It could look something like this. This is an example from the demo and customer case study that I wanted to share, and I can share that with you offline. There's materials that I'll share with you after the session. What we see with, for example, a 2 petabyte pay-as-you-go offer that has the tiers and has all the different access policies. The pricing for Caeves combines of the licensing that the customer pays through Microsoft, and then obviously what they consume in terms of storage, compute, disk, and infrastructure as a whole. So basically, I added up the pricing of the total cost of ownership of Caeves licensing plus storage for this customer based on pay-as-you-go.
So what is 2? Yeah, no, it's
Just 2 petabytes. Yeah. For 2 petabytes, the list price for this would be, obviously the total monthly cost would be $51,000 per month, bottom line, which equates to 2.6 cents per gigabyte per month. Now, most customers at that order of magnitude, we help them with a private offer, and we typically get to that like sub 2 cents per gigabyte per month to drive a business case to say, well, I'm now sitting on Dell, NetApp, EMC, Nisuni, Panzura. I pay 8 to 15 cents per gigabyte per month. If I can get this to 2, I look like a hero. So that's the goal for us to kind of help customers to get there. And the more volume, the better it's going to be for all of us. So That's why we are only kind of taking a fraction of the cost. You do need to be confident in terms of the adoption and the performance, and we know that we can deliver like at that speed and that order of magnitude of a couple of 100 terabytes a week. So we know we can onboard quick.
But I mean, if you're a smaller company, you can have a cost example for a smaller company with a less reduced price.
We have a TCO calculator on the website,
Okay.
and that basically helps you to model pricing. We have customers, those are friendlies that they were interested in when we launched our pricing preview last year. They say, we want to try this out, we just want to get 5 terabytes on the platform. Well, that's free of charge, we don't make any money. So at that time, we're going to have a conversation, what else is there on the platform? What else can you bring to the platform, or do you want to be a reference? So basically, that's why our focus is enterprise, because we know that, for example, Robert Bosch, they have 150 petabytes in archive data. That's it's a lot of data there. So if I can only get a fraction of that on the platform and show the value that we can bring at the front end and at the back end of that.
Do you have slides on the go-to-market, or
Yeah.
I can ask this now?
Yeah, you just go ask. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So-
it's fire away.
We can imagine potentially a lot of partners are interested to, let's say, integrate, associate, include this solution within their product, things like that. Is OEM a commercial, a business path for you, an option, or you prefer to be just on the marketplace and have some reseller agreement with some?
For now, the next 6 to 12 months, marketplace, getting ready for the CSP resale model. That's what we're working on with Microsoft right now. So if a partner happens to be a Microsoft partner, they can actually resell this as a CSP going forward. Not yet. That's what we're working on with them. But I think the partner ecosystem is going to be really interesting as soon as we go broader in terms of on-prem support, potentially encapsulating this as a managed service, creating multi-tenancy behind it. So let's say if you work with an MSP, you can kind of OEM it.
Yeah, I ask this because many, let's say, mid-range file server solution embed some sort of Windows operating system and build something, so they can have the idea to include you as another function to extend their capabilities.
Yeah, and I think that something that's overlooked a lot in these environments. There's a lot of workflow, application, user-centric solutions, almost like the SaaSification of the business, so to say. But the thing that's so overlooked is indeed the historical information of the environment. Deep storage is still a workload that is lingering around somewhere. We got to do something with it. So I do believe, Philip, to your point, that's definitely an opportunity. Just from a business perspective, where we are, just getting out of startup, getting started with I think we're not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I feel would be interested. So I definitely encourage partners. I'm working with a few in the UK right now to understand how they operate in that sense.
Yes, I ask this because in, let's say, Linux world, Unix world, etc., the integration is not probably the same. The vertical application is also something needed, but on Windows, people are looking for really transparent integration. Yeah. So if you are completely well integrated and it's transparent for them, they love this.
Yeah.
Because it's native Windows, things like that. Where we say
it's built for Microsoft companies, enterprises, for Microsoft administrators and IT architects. So we chose that direction because that's our background. Apart from Novell, but I don't touch Novell much.
What about other question, different question about application integration? You mentioned Office 365, but some people has other content management platform, Box things.
Well, those, if you're looking at kind of shadow IT solutions like Box, Dropbox, or specific silos, then obviously you have to migrate away. If you choose to embrace Caeves and say, hey, let's unify the approach of putting it in an object store and then enrich it from there, then you most likely have to move away from that. But I think bugs at the enterprise, I do see them sporadically. I saw them in Belgium at what was it? Sibelco at the time. And I had conversations with them, but that was still going to be ending up in a silo or for a specific division, a specific part, a specific environment. But I think the majority of the different silos, they would still be susceptible to approach it from a data perspective, really from a data storage perspective.
What about integration with all the online drive thing, let's say with Google Drive, with all of these, but finally people say, oh, I use this,
Yeah.
but I need to connect, there is no transparent migration or access. I need to open Google Drive because I know my file is there, but
Yeah.
if I have only my primary directory or folder,
Yeah. Also, something we've discussed internally and with the development team, and the connector itself is I'm not saying ready, but we're kind of preambled integration with Google Workspace for that. But then obviously your file system front end, you may need that at home. You just gotta use Google Drive as an interface, REST API, and then index it from there, and you bypass the storage layer per se, the file system layer, and then basically connect it to these services. And then that proposition is a little different, but technically that's entirely possible. We factored it in when we were designing the solution to be as flexible as possible. Think of the Caeves instance. Of course, it represents itself as a file system, but think of it as a scratch pad. It's there as a migration ingestion point, and you can still access it through a file system. Great. But if you don't need it, you shut it down. You just let the storage live in the object store and connect it to things like Copilot.
do you consider it's an opportunity for you to sell to company who adopt, let's say, Google Drive or similar things at the enterprise level, and say, oh, I need to now swallow back all of this data, ingest in Caeves, in order to now migrate officially to Azure Blob Storage, and say now everything will be transparent?
Yeah, that's a hard sell.
Okay.
I think I'm just being, just honestly speaking, I think our target workloads is like legacy storage environment, legacy NAS and SAN, an object, to pick that up and give that more context. To bring it back from a workflow or like even a SharePoint environment, we're working with a customer to move it from SharePoint. They pay 32 cents to keep per gig per month to keep it in SharePoint, but that's all workflow, document management, document control. So how do you deal with that? And then you have to retrain the users again to use the data differently, because they were familiar with yellow folders. Oh, I'm so glad with my drive mapping, my P drive, my home drive. And now I got to move in SharePoint. I got all this document workload. Now we got to move to another direction. So that's really hard. It does exist, and the conversations are happening with customers, but the majority, 90% around the conversation I'm having is around, hey, I got this storage grid environment. I got this Dell EMC Isilon that I'm still sitting in, coming end of life. HP Nimble storage, end of 2024, end of life. So we got to figure out an alternative. Why don't we look at Caeves as an alternative for that? So that's what we're typically look at in terms of compelling events. End of life, vendor lock-in, or introducing cost optimization.
What about the other? You say you will cover competition.
I have a competition slide. I think we have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, because you mentioned
roadmap.
comprise, you mentioned other things, I think. And
I definitely want to have a broader conversation on this. I'll be quick here. We have this slide that we've put together also with our market awareness and market understanding from customer discussions, from not only from now, but also from the past. So most of this is updated. I definitely want to encourage looking at it, and we'll share this under confidentiality with the entire team in terms of the cost of ownership and also the types of capabilities for enrichment of the data. So basically we have looked at solutions like NetApp. We know NetApp because we helped design some of these products. I was in the CVO product team. I was on the Azure NetApp Files team helping them, as well as we've competed against Nasuni Penzura, which basically creates an overlay file system in their own proprietary format on top of Object Store, but then still require pretty much hot access for the majority of the workloads in the tiers, and therefore the cost efficiencies, including the additional service cost, didn't really add up the way that we wanted to add up in the context of deep storage. So our focus area may look like we're competing against pure play primary storage file systems, but we believe that a lot of source data sits on primary storage that shouldn't be sitting there, that should be sitting on deep storage, or should be sitting on intelligent deep storage on Caeves. That's why we put this together. Are we going to be cheaper than the cheapest and deepest JBOD, or most likely not? But you know, customers I spoke with, they were sitting on Wasabi. They had a little issue in 2024. You know, there's a price you pay for everything, right? But we're very cost efficient in terms of driving the cost down. Most customers already use Azure Objects, or they use Azure Files as a dumping ground, or Amazon S3. They're like, I just need to kind of, you know, wrap my head around to figure out what's in there. I don't even know what's in there, and I'm paying a premium for that. Can you help?
So, at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned data sovereignty, all of these.
Yep.
You sell to a European company.
Yep.
Okay, it's a US software, but people say, hey, I love Azure Files, but I prefer, I love Azure storage, blob storage, but I prefer a German, a French, or an Italian cloud provider.
Yeah, well, you know, and that happens.
Yeah, because people say, hey, I want my data on my territory.
Exactly, and I'm in, you know, I'm not saying in full agreement, but I do definitely understand that. And I believe it's important to factor and weigh that in. So I can't change that at that point. The only thing I can change is say, well, you can virtually structure, streamline, and associate your, you know, update your security principles, your data residency principles, and where you store the data. I can do that for you. I can't make you change your thought process on it, per se. I can try to convince you, because if I'm going to convince your CFO to shed off 70% of the storage cost, then obviously that's going to be a different discussion.
But are you compatible with something like Azure Stack, for instance? You know the
Yeah, Azure Local nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're working with a partner in the Netherlands, which is basically established by a group of Microsoft MVPs to build a reference architecture for Azure Local. But the biggest problem right now, and this is coming, there's no object store support on Azure Local on the actual pod itself. So supposedly last week was MVP Summit, and I was able to meet with my friend, and he said, yeah, okay, it's coming in November. So if it comes in November, you can isolate the entire ecosystem on Azure Local, which has my interest. And that would basically, Philip, to your point, that would help address the questions around data sovereignty. But still, there's always going to be, if there's Microsoft label on it, there's always going to be people that like it or they don't.
But Microsoft Local, it's still under US services. So if the Homeland Security says, or the cloud access, I need to have access to the data, because it's a Microsoft service, it's still accessible. You cannot ignore that.
I don't think you can, but we have to look at that, what that looks like. I don't have all the fundamentals of that, but to your point, I think you're right. I think it's more about factoring it in and siloing it in locally.
Yeah.
And then basically putting it on an entire different ecosystem, like let's say put it on OVH Cloud, or put it within a Eurostack, or put it in Nextcloud.
Yeah.
Again, that is a complete shift of ownership, to your point, and custody. And I think that's the only way to kind of fully tackle that situation.
And could you do that without changing the product?
I believe we can do that.
But it's effort from your side.
Yeah, it's effort
You have to
from
work with the provider and have to work out a specific integration for them.
Yeah.
And
And
this will take probably
this
a
could
year
take time,
or two,
yeah.
or
Yeah, I've reached out to Nextcloud because I think they were built upon, what's it called, own clouds? And then basically they kind of created an iteration called Nextcloud. And I think that would be a great opportunity. That's from what I understand, it's a German.
are you already working?
I just established contacts with their
Okay.
CTO. So
But
yes,
if I understand well, it will be only one part, you just only the storage, not the Copilot
No.
things.
no,
You
no.
need,
Yeah,
something
if you
from
want the
Microsoft.
Copilot integration, you're still going to be dependent on Microsoft. However, and this is part of the roadmap that I did want to share briefly. There's plenty more of information in the other slides.
Yeah.
We're building MCP server capability, so you completely feed off the storage and create like a Postgres database locally in your own environment with the context. You would call it a context lake. You create a context lake on top of a data lake and subsequently attach MCP server to it. And that MCP server then allows you to kind of move away from all of let's say, Microsoft Copilot. If that's something you don't want to honor, you can leverage MCP server, you can you connect Anthropic to it, or Claude, or whatever types of models, as well as interfaces. You can build your own custom interfaces. So as part of what we're building now, where we currently have a data plane, we're working on the enterprise management plane because everyone wants fancy dashboards and ROI and calculations and things of that nature. So that's going to be there in the next couple of months. And then obviously this year, we're focusing on releasing an MCP server integration for really being able to break away in that sense from just Copilot, because Copilot is only what it is.
But you're snapshotting the data, so you make some kind of backup.
You mean on the object store?
Yeah.
Or we basically, what we currently do, we snapshot the file system,
Yes.
and we use previous versions on the file system itself. So we basically use the alternate data streams to kind of keep that current, and use the USN to identify whether a full volume snapshot is needed. That's file system snapshot. That file system snapshot is then stored in an object, in object storage.
Yeah, but can that object storage be outside Azure?
At this point, not.
No,
but
because
in the
Microsoft
future,
doesn't
yes.
like you to do that.
Yeah. In this scenario, currently today, no, but in the future, when we're building like on-premises integration
Yeah.
and extensibility, definitely.
Are you going to work with other graph databases? I think, for example, on Neo4j,
Mhm.
just the market leader in that area.
Yep. I haven't thought about that actually. No.
Because they're integrating themselves in all the big AI pipelines as far as I got from the last press conference.
Yeah, no, I haven't given that a specific thought. The only way for us to get to industry standard at this point, the quickest route for us would be MCP. And I think logically speaking as well, and I still work with my engineering team to figure out what the impact is, but we have a good grasp on how to deliver this within the next 3 to 6 months.
Sorry, but I wonder, I mean, everybody does their own MCP server, correct? But I mean, if I go to an environment where 2 or 3 parties have their own MCP servers, does it mean I have to do several of them, or can I standardize on one, or how does it work?
I think right now where the industry is, to your point, everyone, they're like sprouting, like they're everywhere. So at this point, it's still very much an MCP server for every type of application. I would assume there's going to be some level of orchestration layer or platform like Foundry that's going to be able to kind of create and ground multiple models or multiple MCP servers or embed them within a singular instance. But I don't think the industry is there yet. From what I'm hearing from my engineering teams, that's still in the works. There's so much happening every day. You get up in the morning and there's something new. It's crazy.